Welcome back, aliens. My name is Davin Reddy. In this video, we'll talk about microservices. Now, to understand microservices, let's go back to 1970s. That's right, when the computers were new. So in 1970s, we were trying to solve simple problems with the help of computers. Maybe scientific problems, but then they were simple in today's term. Now, after the successful use of computers for the scientific and research purpose, we thought, can we use it for commercial use as well? And that's where in early 90s or late 90s, a lot of companies started using softwares and computers for their internal use. Also, we also got social media websites in early 2000. But now, if you try to understand the entire ecosystem, or if you try to understand the world of softwares, everywhere, in fact, everything in the world is happening with the help of softwares. If you want to book a cab, you will use software. If you want to transfer money, you will use software. If you want to buy something online, or if you want to buy something, you will use a software, right? So if everything is done with the help of a software, which we normally call them as applications, what normally happens is we build a particular website. Now that's what we call them. We build a website, and in that particular website, you will be having all the services. Now, when you talk about services, what exactly it means? Now, imagine a shopping website. Example, if you go to Amazon, you get a lot of features there, right? On Amazon, you can basically search for a product. You can buy a product. You can basically add a product to a cart, and then you can buy a product. You can pay for that online. And also, as a seller, I can sell my own devices, or I can sell my own things on Amazon, because it's also a marketplace. So basically, Amazon itself is a huge software which has a lot of different services, right? Now, if you want to build this website by yourself, what you will do is you have a traditional mindset. Of course, one of the best thing about building a software nowadays is we think about creating different modules. So what you do is you break down the entire project into small parts. In fact, that's how we think, right? So if I want to build a website, I will just break down the services into small modules. I will work on one particular module. And also that's what we also suggest, right? So if you have a big team, you can divide your big team into small groups. So let's say if you have 50 people working on one big project, you can have 5 different teams of 10, or maybe 10 different teams of 5 members. And then these people will work on one particular feature, right? And that's how you can build this amazing website like Amazon or Amazon.com to buy something. Now, the thing is, the approach is actually coming from the software development field. Now, when you build a normal software, what is the tendency? So we have a software which works on a desktop. In fact, when I started my career, I started in that zone. You can just write an application which works on a particular machine, right? So what you do is you structure your entire application for one device. Now, that's what we do in the web world as well. Even if you have multiple teams, they are working on different services, they are still one package, right? So maybe in Java or in other languages, what you do is you create a package, right? You create, let's say in Java, we create a var file or a jar file. You will put all the services in this particular var file, and then you will deploy this on a cloud or on any server. The problem is you have a lot of services here on one system. So let's talk about some advantages of doing this. The advantage of doing this type of architecture, which we normally call them as monolithic application or monolithic architecture, where you have everything in one place, all the services, right? Of course, they are designed by other members. You can simply group them. You can form a particular package and you can deploy it. So the good thing is you know what is happening with the application. What are the drawbacks? There are multiple drawbacks with this type of architecture. The first one is team dependencies. So let's say if all your team, your 10 teams are working together to make all these features, they have to actually dependent on each other. They should know when you are going to go for the next release, right? So of course, with every release, you go for a version. So you have to specify, okay, I got a new feature, but let me know when I can push this feature in the product so that we can deploy the entire project. The second one is the scalability. Let's say if we talk about Amazon itself, in fact, we can take this example, or we can take this concept for multiple examples, multiple domains. But if you stick to Amazon here, let's say if there's a sale going on. Now, if you know that tomorrow there will be a huge sale, maybe for some festival, some other event, what do you think, which of the services will be needed scalability here? In the monolithic application, what happens is if you know that there's a sale going on or there will be sale happening next week, what you will do is you will scale your application in multiple systems, right? Maybe you will try to do vertical scaling by adding more servers or more RAM power, or you can do the horizontal scaling. So basically you will have the same application and having multiple instances of them. See, in terms of sale, it's not like you will get new users or you will get a lot of new users, you will get a lot of new sellers. What you will get is more searches. You will get more payments. So instead of scaling the entire application, don't you think we should be scaling only the small modules there? So that's what we want, right? We want to use this particular service. So instead of scaling the entire monolithic application, we should be able to scale that individual services. Next one, what if you have a big application and if you think we will build this application using as a one monolithic application, the thing is you have to stick to one technology. Maybe if you're using Java for the entire application, you have to stick to Java. Even if you have a new team who says, okay, I want to work on Node.js, they can't because you are building one big application, which will create one particular package, which will go to one particular server. What you can do is, if you have a different services here, you can actually create different services using different technologies, right? So that's one of the advantage we want, and that can be done with the help of microservices. So each service which I'm talking about here, they are called microservices. The advantage is, if you have 10 teams, they can divide the entire project into small services. One thing to remember here, each service here should be self-contained. They should be able to deploy it separately, and also they should be scaled separately. They should not be dependent on some other services. So each service here will be called microservices. Now, since they are microservices, we can create them in any technology we want. So one service can be done with Java, second service can be done with Node.js. And now since there are multiple services, you can scale them the way you want. Maybe if you have 10 services, I want to take this fifth and sixth service and I want, let's say, 10 instances of them. I want the second service to have 5 instances. So I can scale based on the service requirement, not for the entire application. And also, since they are separate services, even if some service goes down, it will not affect the entire application. Now, in terms of monolithic application, if you make one change, it is not working, it will crash the entire application. That's not the case with microservices. So basically, what is microservice? They are individual services which are self-contained. They can run as an individual service. And maybe let's say if I want to go to Amazon, if I say I want to search for the products, that's one service. I want to create a new account, that's one service. I want to sell a particular product, that's one service. So these are your microservices. Now everything looks good on paper, right? We are saying that microservices are great. Do we have any challenges there? The thing is, yes. Now, since we have multiple services, how these services will communicate? It's not like they can't, but then it's difficult to configure them, okay? And you will be doing that only once. You have to use service discoveries, you have to use API gateway, which will stand in front of all the services. And you will be also having some resilience system in between. What if some service failed? Do we have fail support there? And creating a microservice is not just about writing code, okay? It's also about creating the architecture before you write a single line of code. How do you design your system? How do you create those services? That's also important. And if you don't design your microservices properly, ultimately you are creating a worst system of monolithic application. Now, one of the questions might be how these services communicate. So they basically uses HTTP request or response to communicate between each other. Of course, they will be having endpoints to communicate. And also we have to also think about security, because now since you have different services, if a customer sends a request, which services you have to go to, and does that particular user has access to do that. So that's the challenges of microservices, but it's an awesome thing. Big companies, they are using microservices on big level. So that's it from this video. I will try to create more videos on microservices, the proper implementation. Let me know in the comment section your thoughts on microservices, and that's it from this video, everyone. Bye-bye.